Resident Evil games are like buses. We go ages without any, and then 3 come along at once. Well, 2.5. Capcom are back with a body-ripping bang in 2023 with arguably the GOAT of the entire Resident Evil series. Thanks to an RE4 demo, I can talk about this game a little earlier than the release planned in 2 weeks' time. Kicking things off here in the last-gen version with the Series S being more in that camp than its bigger brother, is this another RE remake of Raccoon City levels. Now, I love the entire horror genre, and RE4 was a love note to the 80s gory, gothic, Italian horror genre, such as The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, and of course zombie flesh eaters. The original GameCube exclusive, no laughing there at the back, quickly became the most ported game outside of Doom, covered in my full retrospective around 5 years ago now. Here though, the latest remake takes a new slant on that classic Mikami-san rebirth, but also leaves half of the last gen behind. Thanks to the limits of the Xbox One and likely helped by its SRAM development design and constraints, this game does not have an Xbox One and Xbox One X version, which is a shame, as I would predict that, like Res 2 and 3, the Xbox One X would run the game better than the Series S. The other aspect will of course be return on investment and effort versus sales. As such, we get a PS4 and a Pro version which we can use to compare against the Series S. I started with this as I thought it was the most interesting comparison, but don't worry, I do have a PS5, Series X and PC all coming tomorrow or shortly thereafter, with the Steam Deck thrown in for good measure. Now, boring stuff out of the way first. Resolution takes a hit over previous releases on PS4 and Pro, with the base PS4 now being interlaced almost certainly to a 1600 by 900p ceiling, meaning the image is running at a half width of 800 and then each 2 frames are interpolated or reconstructed back to that final target. As this was the level of the old Xbox One, you can already see where that one would have sat at this point. In addition, other cutbacks are made, but we'll get to those in a moment. The Pro and Series S both have the same dual modes, a resolution and frame rate mode, and all 3 consoles run an unlocked FPS like all Resident Evil games under the RE engine, and obviously the changes come down to pixel frequency and pixel clarity. The Pro in resolution mode targets 2240 by 1260 and does not appear to use the interlace mode, as those telltale signs do not show up on alpha hair cards, thin disoccluded edges and post effects all appearing stable under most movement and fast cuts. In fact, there's something specific around how the Pro renders its post-processing effects such as depth of field, which is different to all other versions. The Series S, on the other hand, does appear to be using interlacing, or at least signs crop up in the hair unlike they do on the Pro, but 30% higher at 2560 by 1440 output target, which does help clarity and reduces high frequency flicker at points in such a high contrast title as this. In action though, they both look very similar in terms of visual outputs, with other effects standing out more than the resolution delta. The FPS mode appears to turn on FSR2 at the balance level on Series S, dropping 43% of that resolution to a new target of 1920 by 1080, which is quite obvious, but it's still not a bad looking game. The telltale signs of dithering breakup can be seen between the 2 modes on hair, for example, and the image is considerably softer, amplified here with the zooms, and obviously if you have chromatic aberration on, that just makes it worse. The Pro drops 48% of its pixel output now, going down to the same level as the PS4's 1600 by 900. Again though, it's now using FSR2, but it still runs better AA and effectively depth of field, which is heavily reduced on the PS4, as that console will be heavily GPU bound all the time in this title. The result is a Pro image that is more stable than the PS4's, yet softer due to less post-processed AA and effects running on the base console. And in fact, even at 1080p, the Series S image is also more stable but far softer due to that FSR2 pass, something I'll cover in my next video. The cutbacks here all seem to be related to the output resolution, and only once we get into the performance do we see most of where that difference comes from. In terms of visual quality, the PS4 and Pro are close. The Pro does run better AA as mentioned, more post effects such as depth of field and bloom, higher specular maps, and general FX quality is better due to the higher resolution levels in that mode or faster frame rates in the other. but they lose out on some additional effects over the Series S, which again is identical in both modes, just with lower precision and one noticed effect. The Series S runs subsurface scattering in the resolution mode, which the Pro and the PS4 rely on the base Lambert diffuse shader pass. But in the FPS mode, the Series S also turns off this SSR pass, which shows how much of a high GPU impact this can have depending on the flesh and lighting in the screen. The Series S runs better and more shadows and ambient occlusion than the last gen PlayStation consoles, creating much better contact and shadows in many scenes as shown here. The Series S also has higher level of detail, with trees and grass popping in often on the last gen consoles and showing far more billboards than the Series S does, with high levels of grass and trees in many areas. Finally, all consoles can suffer from loading in texture bitmaps very late. The PS4 and Pro are half the install size of the current gen, so some of that will be the base assets installed here, but the Pro suffers the most due to its high resolution demands and disproportionate memory and bandwidth upgrade, meaning you will often see moments like this where walls, faces and such will look very blurry and have a mixture of bitmap levels. The Pro is the worst, the PS4 is then close behind, and then the Series S, showing that memory constraints continue to be a big hurdle for developers, and I'm sure they are heavily juggling memory and hard drive access here aggressively under the hood, which, as I've mentioned before, is going to affect the Series S this generation, more so maybe than even the Pro. The biggest increase the S offers is the enhanced lighting effects that the extra shadow and AO offer, making a dark game look much better. Along with the higher levels of LOD in many sequences, it does offer a subtle but welcome boost in visual quality. That said, almost everything remains intact on the last gen consoles, and it really offers a great level of visual quality that shows the improvement to the lighting, materials, destruction, dismemberment and seamless loading the RE engine and the team have added here.
Next.
The last big change is largely CPU related, with animation cycles and skinning being cut back at a distance on PS4 and less so on the Pro. Dynamically in action, you can see characters showing half and even quarter interpolation of animation, which is obvious when it happens, with many characters on screen. The Pro in resolution mode is less affected here, with the FPS mode showing it more, but overall the bump in CPU and GPU helps this console out. The Series S does not appear to be affected in any areas or mode here, and that's not a surprise, with a significantly faster CPU on offer. Moving into performance then, starting with the PS4, it targets 60 FPS, and even with the cutbacks from its peers and previous RE engine releases, this never hits that rate in my test. No matter where you are walking into a small room trying to dodge a chainsaw wielding lunatic, and more so in any dense vegetation areas, which is a big increase on the hardware and engine over RE2 and 3 remakes, this is a game that will have both your base PS4 and Pro spinning up fast on the menu screen due to this. What we see is a performance rate that is approximately 30% above an ideal 30 FPS cap, and with my frame rate graph here showing performance stays within that 33 millisecond frame time, which gives us an average of around 40 FPS after a mix of set moments, real-time cutscenes and action in this demo. The heavier drops from 50 to 30 are very obvious, and although I doubt it will be added, having a 30 FPS cap in the menu would be a nice addition for some, and would certainly be my recommendation for the PS4 version, something which is similar to the resolution mode on the other two consoles. Now, with two modes each on the Series S and Pro, we'll kick off with the resolution mode. Now, as noted, the Pro in this mode appears to use a native 1260p output rather than the checkerboard solution of the base PS4 and the Series S. This means it offers a 96% increase in pixel throughput to the screen over the base PS4, along with a minor uplift in depth of field and ambient occlusion. The interlace mode has a cost though, and normally provides around 30% performance back from the same native output, albeit using a PC to baseline that. As such, the levels we see here are often lower than the base PS4 in this mode, with some sections in this demo dipping below 30 FPS. The choices here make sense if they cap the game at 30 FPS in this mode, which they may do in the retail version, but taking a good selection of areas from the demo and the game averages out at around 35 FPS. And in reality, the increases we see over the PS4 Plus not using the interlace mode all start to make sense. Adding to this, the fact the choices on the Series S mean that that console is offering better visual quality, higher level of detail, SSR, better ambient occlusion and shadows, and still manages to perform on average throughout these matched sections around 40% better than in the resolution mode. Again, reinforcing the settings used here on the Series S, as the GPU is very close to the PS4 Pro's level and should really be able to run the same game with enhanced effects here at similar performance levels. What we see represents the choices made by the team are for the best and reinforcing what I say often. Resolution numbers are largely meaningless past the point, and here the two consoles look very close in that regard, but the Series S takes the lead in performance and overall visual quality. That said though, even with a big performance boost over the Pro, the Series S is never close to being a 60 FPS title, and VRR will not help here, as it can often dip below or close to the VRR range, and as such, I would still prefer an option to cap this mode if you should choose to. As you are often around or above the PS4 performance levels in this mode, it is welcome, but it still has a sufficient gap in performance demands to not be able to call this a true 60 FPS mode. But at this point in these tests, the Series S does win out in quality and performance, if only just.
Sorry.
Now finally, the frame rate mode is the one that should deliver all the goods, right? Well, it is significantly better. The Pro now uses the interlace mode, and because of this, it actually makes a small bump to level of detail, increasing effects further over the base PS4, but it's still below the Series S. It can now hit 60 FPS and it holds that in many sections, but as you would expect, the same areas that could cause dips to down to 30 or below it in the resolution mode now cause some low 50s for long periods, specifically in the middle of a yokel mob looking to take your head as a trophy. Now this is my preferred mode to play in though, as the Pro it not only improves the visual response to match most screens, but it also feels smoother to play but helps a great deal with those input times, which I'll cover in my next video. But they are very slow and heavy in the resolution mode, and some of that is the dead zone on the sticks, but also the frame times this mode offers does help the response and aiming in the title, as close as we get to a 60 FPS mode at least. And now that the resolution targets are closer, albeit with a 44% lower final output, the Pro is now within 5% performance levels on average for the Series S, although we do see some areas that can be a little more. This is a mode that is close enough to that 60 FPS level to be a true option for pretty much all players. Now the Series S does an even better job here, keeping close to 60 FPS, albeit only in these demo sections I can show here. The areas of dense foliage, alpha effect, fill rate and bandwidth effectively can cause small skips into 33 milliseconds, but it's never bad enough to warrant concern, and the extra graphical effects this offers, although the subsurface scattering is a minor reduction, it really is practically the same as the resolution mode, just with a softer image quality, but it certainly takes the win here for the best of the three formats to hit that staple of 60 FPS that the majority of RE engine-powered games target. The choice on this console really works well to get us close to the other now generation consoles. It just misses out on those ray tracing effects that are obviously not here, which were present in the RE2 and 3 updates, but here the team chose to drop them in favour of likely high resolution effects and performance, and arguably the amount of effort required, and even if possible squeezing that BVH and the work required into this mini white speaker. But really the only sound you will hear are the cries of death and victory as the Series S takes the crown in my RE4 remake comparison so far. But will that last when I turn around and do it all over again on the PS5, the Series X and PC? Well, join me later this week for another slice of RE action ahead of the full game next week.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Now remember, if you like what I do, please help by commenting down below, subscribing, sharing, and of course, ringing the bell, as it could be bingo time. And with all that done, I'll see myself out in a far less dramatic style than our floppy-haired hero Leon. But I will catch you on the next one.
I'll let myself out.